we're not alone. Maybe our company does not wish us well.
So excited to chat with you both for Stowaway in VHS Beyond. I loved it. It's one of my favorite segments of this franchise. Kate, I'd love to start with you. Congrats on making your directorial debut with this, but I'd love to hear, I know Mike wrote this, but how did the sort of idea for this first come about?
Luckily, I don't get a lot of incoming calls these days for work, but this was one that just came out of the blue one day and landed in my inbox. And I was hesitant because having lived with the director for most of my adult life, I am aware of how much work it is and how much your heart you put into it and how much preparation is required. And I was a little scared. And then so I may have started with no, and then the call came back again. And my husband and my manager both were like, this is the time, you should really do this. This is worth it. And so I dove in, as I often do, without looking, and kind of never looked back. I knew that when I was talking about what I wanted to explore, I knew that my favorite movies in this space are The Fly and Contact. And one of my favorite Stephen King short stories is The Jaunt. And I knew I wanted something in that world. I liked the female protagonist trying to prove something. I liked ambition. I liked the fact that the terrible thing that happens is that everybody tries their best. I love the concept of relativity when it comes to time. All of those things. And as I would have this conversation with Mike and just kind of bounce ideas off each other, he went away, and in about 20 minutes, he came back and said, what about this? Blah, blah, blah. And it was Stowaway.
I love that. And there's so many great elements that I like. I love the Fly and Contact connection. It works so well as the short sort of progresses. And so, Alanah, I'd love to turn to you next. I know, you have done some voice acting of recent in games, but this I feel like is really your first big role in live action. And I'd love to hear, what it was about the script and working with Kate that really drew you to want to be a part of it.
It's kind of a no-brainer. When Mike Flanagan writes something and Kate Siegel is directing it and asks you to do it, you'd be crazy to say no, in my opinion. So more than anything, I wanted to have the opportunity to work with somebody, especially in the horror space. Like you said, this is my first significant live action role. And I had access to Kate at all times, meaning that I had access to a brilliant actress who is so well known in the exact space that we're working in that for me, it was like almost like I was taking a course. Like I got to be like, and this feels dumb. How does it look? Why this? And it was so wonderful to have access to all of that expertise and knowledge, and also comfort. I'm really comfortable with Kate, so I didn't feel any judgment or any pressure. I wasn't nervous because no part of me was worried that she wouldn't have my back and that she didn't also want to make the best thing possible. So it just, why would I ever say no to that circumstance of things? But the script itself, I think, is a really fun one to explore because it's so relatable. There's so many human elements in it. Obviously, it's in a sci-fi setting. We have a sci-fi paint shop. But I think we can all really strongly relate to needing to prove yourself, wanting to prove yourself against people who doubt you and what you're willing to lose to be able to prove yourself. There are a lot of ways that I could say that I've related to that in all of my work in gaming over the years with many people who, girls don't play video games. Like there's so much of that my whole career. So it's just a really relatable human story that obviously just kind of ends in a I'll just say tragic way. It just ends a little sad.
Yeah, I was so lucky to have Alanah. We were at a game night with a bunch of our friends, and I just kind of sidled up to her because Alanah, if you know her, has this very unique charisma, which is entirely her own. There's an energy to her in a room that draws you to her, but she's not particularly bombastic, which is, a very LA trait of actors. They're like, yay, yes. And I was just sort of staring at her and I was like, I think it has to be Alanah. And I just sort of walked up to her weirdly and was like, hey, you want to be in my movie?
You really did walk up to me super weirdly. It was the most like Hollywood party thing you could have done. Was I was leaning against a counter and you just came and leaned next to me.
But to your credit, you just said, yeah, sure. And
I think I was like, are you sure? I really wanted to be sure that I wouldn't mess it up. Like I was really like, as long as you think I can do it and that I was conscious of not wanting to take an opportunity away from someone else as well. But Thank you for
But it was
asking.
very, very clear to me after the first take of the first scene of Alanah. I texted some of my friends who are actors and her friends and I'm friends, and I was like, y'all better quit because Alanah is going to come get you. Like, it was clear that she was extremely talented from the get-go and very directable and so game to just collaborate. I was really, really impressed.
I think that I love hearing that, and I do think your spotlight's about to grow in the world of film, Alanah, after this, because you are tremendous in this. And I actually did want to touch on that note of ambition as well for both of you. But Alanah, if you'd like to start, because like you said, you come from the game writing world, and that is one that's very driven by passion and ambition. And I'd love to hear how much you pulled from your own experience with that for your character, as well as Kate, bringing this story to life, how much you pulled from your own ambition as an actor to really imbue that into this character.
For me, like I said, I've definitely had doubts my entire career. When I started writing about video games for magazines, I was 17 years old. And back then, not as many women did play video games. Like, there's still doubts on women who play video games now, but there was tons of scrutiny back then. So the thing that I latched onto that, like, I think let me find the human in the performance was thinking about how I could relate to that specifically. And the way that I do relate to it is definitely my whole career. I've had people tell me that I wouldn't make it, that people don't want to hear girls talk about video games. They don't want to hear women review video games. What do you know about video games? You're playing video games for male attention, despite the fact that I've been playing games since I was 4 years old. So it was very easy to just put the spin of, I'm even self-critical of how much I sometimes worry that I do things in order to prove that I can do them, rather than because I necessarily want to. And I think a lot of the ridiculous amounts of work I've done in the games industry has been so that I could keep saying, I did it again though, watch me. And sometimes you have to check yourself on that to be like, am I doing this because I enjoy it, or am I doing it because I need to prove that I can do it? But I think we all relate to different pieces of that throughout. Just every day you'll face something where you feel someone doubting you and you feel like you really have to, put that to somebody. I think it's such a human experience. So it was really easy for me to just take my particular circumstance and apply that to the role. But like I said, I think there's something in that for absolutely all of us. I'd be surprised if a lot of people didn't find that relatable, even though she's a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy theorists are really just people who want to be validated. That's really what it is. And I think we all need that at the end of the day.
I love putting ambitious women on camera. I love playing ambitious women. I love writing for ambitious women. I think it is something that is squashed in women quite a bit. And even in my career as an actress, there's this pervasive thought, like, well, if you want it too much, you won't get the part. Like, if they can feel how bad you want it, then you can't have it. And I hate that. What I want to do and work with are people who want it really badly. I don't want people on my set who are sort of like half-assed about this project or any project. And maybe that's a protective stance because I do so badly want to create. But I don't think ambition or desire are bad traits to have as a creative person, an artist, a scientist, a mother, anything. And so I just wanted to highlight that and let it be known that as I plant my flag into what will be my tiny little directing mountain, that part of that is ambition.
Well, I love that you made something where the ambition turns out really negatively.
Yeah. Listen, there's a bad side to it. This is a whoops. I always, yeah.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Those people who would walk into the spaceship, because there are people in the audience who go, I would never. And there are people in the audience going, I totally would. And I want to sit with the people who totally would.
Well, and I mean, on the note of it ending negatively, that's just kind of how the VHS franchise goes, really. Yeah. So it's a byproduct of that. But I do love the way that, I mean, Alanah, your character is such a positive example of ambition throughout this film. So kudos to you both on capturing that. Kate, I want to turn to you for looking at the visual approach to this film, because the one thing I've always loved about the VHS franchise is how well they let each of their filmmakers experiment with looks and styles. And how did you land on what you wanted this segment to look like? Well,
I knew from the script that I was handed that in the back half of this, we have to go into space. So we have to go into space. And I also knew that the budget was quite small. And I knew that going into it as well. And so I spent a lot of time thinking about first of all, how I was going to make a camera float. It's a very tough thing to do. We didn't use a video camera. We used an Alexa, which is a big, heavy-bodied camera. And then I had 2 different lens packs. One was an infrared lens that I needed because I was going to light the set entirely with infrared light. So let me rewind. So I knew I needed to make it look like space. And so I spoke to a lot of people who were much more experienced than I was. And I said, if you needed to make a camera float, how would you do it? And a lot of people said things like a bungee. And we talked about like switching to a lighter camera and that thing. And it wasn't quite working. And then when Michael Fimignari agreed to come on as my DP and my cinematographer, the first thing he said to me was, have you ever seen how infrared light behaves on camera? And I said, no, what can you show me? And he's like, I can't show you anything. It hasn't been done before. Like, because Dune doesn't overlay and Nope doesn't overlay. But again, those are huge budget movies. And so their infrared starts with VFX kind of domino chain. So he took me to Area Rentals to do a camera test, and we started to look at how infrared behaved on cameras, pure infrared with no filter and no color correction. And I was in love with it. The lens flares were so bizarre, and the way that you can have all of your overhead lights on. So you have a fully open pupil, and then you can turn the lights off, but the light quality doesn't change on camera, but the pupil will contract. And so you can practically do the effect of the pupil widening, which I just loved. And so then I had to convince a series of executives that this was okay. And they're like, well, what can you show me? And I'm like, it doesn't exist. No one's done it. I'd like to be the first one to do this for a short period of time. And then I had to go find a bunch of ophthalmologists and be like, hey, am I allowed to shine this light at people? And we did all of that. And so we had that set. So we had, okay, this will feel alien. The light will feel alien. And there's like 10 infrared lights in all of California, and we ordered all of them. And then we got a bunch of that strip lighting, and we were like, all right, here we go. And then Ari also had something called a Trinity head, which is a gyroscopic crane head that we put on a Steadicam operator. And so once we saw that move, it could pan, it could 360, and it's controlled at monitor. And so we could slowly move it. It comes with its own operator. So Fimignari was standing next to me, and we were making it twist and turn. And when I saw those 2 things come together, I was like, we got it. We're in space. And we did a couple of like pretty cheap Twilight Zone tricks to make you believe Alanah was floating. And I believed in my heart that the VHS audience they want to come along for the ride. They're willing to suspend. And so I was like, I just need to give them enough that they buy in. Of course, there will always be people being like, well, her hair would have, or her clothes would have. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. But I want you and I to go on this journey together in our minds that we have created a floating VHS camera. And I'm very happy with the way it turned out in that section.
I believed it wholeheartedly. I love hearing all that steps because they all worked perfectly for that effect. I was quite stunned to see the floating camera effect. So you did it. Congrats.
Yay. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so Alanah, I'd love to hear, we can't get into spoilers, so I won't ask the full thing, but you do have some prosthetics at some point in this segment. And I'd love to hear what it was like, sorry, words are all jumbled up in my head. What it was like having all of those put on you and then seeing them in the mirror for the final effect.
So it came in 2 stages. Again, also trying not to talk about spoilers, but having them put on for the ones that were on me, super chill. The girls who were doing that were really nice. I was just learning my monologues for the next day. Like, that part's really easy. You just kind of sit in a chair and people touch you. The second component of that is actually that I have to sort of get into something that is pre-built. Again, trying to avoid spoilers. And that was very uncomfortable. There was like one day where I was like, sort of accidentally being choked. And then a second day where I had trouble breathing. Like, some of that was complicated for sure. But I was so excited to see how it was going to look. So like, even when I was in those positions, I was just like, I can't wait to see how it turns out. And then, I walk out and I finally get to see it after we done the take, and I was like, oh my God, that's awful. And like, it was so exciting to see. So definitely very uncomfortable, but it's so worth it. Like, such an important thing for us to end up doing. And it was really cool to see that whole process of how that all came together as well, because I did see some pre-production shots of like how Kate wanted it to look, and then some in-production shots and how it ended up looking. Was like such a cool thing to watch from the sidelines, to watch the effects team like put that together over time slowly. And I had to have like molds made and all that stuff. It was a really cool, just like totally creative part of the job that I'm not at all familiar with, that it was just really, really interesting to see come full circle. Whereas for me, it was just sort of sit there and stand in something. I had probably the easier job, even if it was very uncomfortable.
Well, it's quite the effect to see on screen, and it's one that I love, Kate, how you do leave it just enough to the imagination for us to sort of, be, like you said, buy into it. So now I see I got to wrap up already, so I will get on out of here. But thank you both so much for taking the time. I truly appreciate it. It's been an honor, and can't wait to get the word out about it. People are going to love this.
Thank you so much.
Biggest discovery in human history.